And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. As always, I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 50. That's right, the big 5-0. This is the week 1 preview episode. We'll see. That's a recurring theme around this team from many a folk. Head coach Zach Taylor, when they asked him, is Ja'Marr Chase going to play and practice this week? We'll see, because last week, Zach Taylor made a complete fool out of himself by promising everyone that Ja'Marr Chase was for sure going to practice and definitely going to play in the game. And then the very next day, Ja'Marr Chase was not practicing at all, made a complete and total liar out of Zach Taylor. So ever since then, Zach Taylor had to put his foot in his mouth and just say, we'll see. We've had a lot of people saying, we'll see. They asked Ja'Marr Chase on Friday when he finally spoke to the media, ending his media blackout. They asked him if he's going to play on Sunday. He said, we'll see. You know, there's still time to get that contract signed, and that's obviously the reason that he hasn't been practicing, hasn't been participating in preseason activities, was because, according to him, Bengals told him they were going to get a contract extension signed and didn't get it worked out for whatever reason. And we'll listen to some of Ja'Marr Chase's quotes from the locker room when he finally did speak to reporters. But there are a lot of questions that are still to be answered this coming Sunday. We're going to talk about what questions do we expect to have answered? What are some of our burning questions? Do a little bit of a preview of the game. What I think some of the keys to the game or some of the important factors in the outcome of this game. And then we'll also talk about, unfortunately, there was some injury news that came up late this week. So that'll also play into the keys of the game, some of the players that the Bengals may be without in this contest. So without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to some clips. This is from Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube. I took the audio and took out some of the choice, more interesting clips of what Ja'Marr said in response to the reporter's question. Here you go.
Didn't ask for a contract or demand a contract this year. It was told by the staff prior to the offseason, right before camp. So I'm open and ready.
Where are you at in terms of your contract status?
Contract status pretty good, for real. I want to say we're off a little bit, but you know it's in reach. But we'll see by game day. I could say it's been a long process. You know, it's been pretty aggravating for the most part, but I try not to let my feelings get in the way, bringing it to work and affecting the guys that's practicing.
What can you do on Sunday?
Whatever I need to do, you know what I'm saying? I'll probably be limited if I do play, but we'll see what happens.
Do you plan to play?
Game time decision.
You'll be willing to play?
If I don't get one, I will play, yes.
Why was it important to you to show up for training camp despite not having a new deal?
Yeah, I'm a team player, man. I put all my guys first, and if no one knows me, then they know now. So I try to give all my support to the guys and, you know, be there for them and help the ones that need help.
What was it like to go through that time period and hear all the outside noise, hear speculation and people talking about this and that? What was that like for you?
Nonsense, for real. You know what I'm saying? I hear it, see it, but I don't pay no attention to it. You know, there's a lot of rumors that was going on that wasn't true, so I just stayed out of it.
What was the most challenging part for you about sitting out and not being out there?
The most challenging part was just knowing that, you know, I'm working hard all offseason to get here and prepare for the season. And, you know, I get here and I go through a contract situation and I hold out for it. So I'll say we're pretty close, you know what I'm saying? There's a few numbers need to be switched around and changed other places, but I'll say we're pretty close.
You mentioned there's a lot of rumors. Is it true that the reports that you want one penny more than Justin Jefferson?
If I want to beat Justin, I'm going to beat the shit out of Justin. Not by a penny, brother, so.
Or at this point, do you feel like the ball's in the Bengals' court? They know what you're asking for, and there's no more cloudiness over it?
Good question. I know it's kind of tough. I mean, we've been doing it for the past 6 months, 7 months, bro, going back and forth, you know what I'm saying? It's been a long process, you know, so I mean, I'm pretty sure they know what I want, you know. I'm not really looking to go a lot higher. It's not really me trying to beat them out, me trying to go crazy. It's just, you know, what's right.
Why is that important to you?
Because there's longevity involved. There's longevity involved.
Can you clarify why your game time decision on Sunday if you're willing to play without?
It's my decision. How about that? Yeah.
Do you think that you're the best wide receiver in the NFL?
I know for a fact I am. I'm confident it'll get done. You know, I know my worth, and I'm sure they know my worth too. So, I mean, that's easy and simple.
All right, that was Jamar Chase. Very interesting on what he had to say. And there's a few interesting quotes we want to pull out from that. First of all, if you're like me, that was all very interesting. My question was, what is long jeopardy? Because he was talking about there's long jeopardy involved. And if you read it in a text story after the fact, a lot of the reporters just said there's longevity involved. I'm assuming they were like, what did he say? Oh, longevity? Okay, I'm just going to write longevity. But he actually said, because if you see it on video, you can read his lips. And it's obvious the first time he said, yeah, there's long jeopardy involved. And even right when he said that, I was like, what does long jeopardy mean? And then he said it again. Yeah, there's long jeopardy involved. He enunciated long jeopardy. Didn't you hear me? Long jeopardy. So obviously he meant longevity. I don't know why he said long jeopardy. But then I was like, what would long jeopardy be? Is that like they have more questions per category, or they have more categories, or there's like a third round of Jeopardy before you get to the final Jeopardy question? So I don't know. I was just confused about what long Jeopardy was. But anyway, besides that, very interesting quotes from Jamar Chase. Mostly that he said that he was going to play if he didn't get the contract extension, but it was going to be his decision. He said it was a game time decision, but then they were like, what do you mean? And he was like, basically it's my decision. So who knows if he's going to play? He just kind of left it up in the air. He said there was still some more time to get a contract extension signed, but maybe that was going to weigh into his decision about whether he was going to play or whether he wasn't. It's got to be a tough situation for him. He also said that right off the beginning of the interview, he said that made it sound like the Bengals front office had said that they were going to get a contract extension done before training camp started, or at the beginning of training camp. And then when he came back, there wasn't a contract extension, or wasn't what he would consider a serious offer. Obviously, maybe they made a lowball offer to him that was well below what he thinks he deserves to get paid. And that was their offer. That's their idea of a contract extension. So he's like, nah, that's not really what I want. So they've been going back and forth. But he even said this has been going on for 6 or 7 months now. Basically, since the end of last season, he's been eligible for a contract extension. And we still don't know the numbers. Like he said, it's getting close, but there's still some distance between the two sides. And he said, they're pretty close, but I'm assuming it has to do probably with guaranteed money, because we know the Bengals don't like to give guaranteed money outside of the first year of the contract. But not only that, Jamar is going into his 4th season, and it's basically 1 year earlier than the Bengals probably would like to give him a contract extension. They don't usually give contract extension early, and most people were even talking last year, doubting whether the Bengals would sign Joe Burrow when he still had 2 years left on his rookie contract. They did end up getting it done with Joe Burrow, but not without a lot of consternation and wringing of hands. Now we've gotten into basically a same situation with Jamar Chase, where Bengals don't want to pony up the money. And I will say, it's not like the Bengals aren't paying the rest of their roster. Like the Bengals are, they're in the middle part of the salary cap in terms of money being spent this year, maybe in the top 10 in terms of money being spent. And since we're talking about the Patriots are the complete opposite. In fact, Patriots are going through a rebuild in a lot of different ways. Maybe most importantly, in the fact that they've got like the most salary cap space out of any team in the NFL right now. They're only spending like 175 or 180 million dollars, when the salary cap is over 250 million dollars. It's like 255. Bengals are getting pretty close to that salary cap. They still have 10 million or so in cap space. Nothing compared to what the Patriots have. So just getting ahead of myself, on paper, Bengals are spending a lot more money on their players than the Patriots are. But getting back to Jamar Chase, he was saying basically that Friday was the deadline and he was going to play, but he probably would be limited. Hopefully Jamar Chase plays, if he doesn't play, he probably won't play every single snap of the game like he normally would. Normally, Jamar Chase doesn't come off the field as long as the offense is out on the field. He's out there. But in this situation where he hasn't really been practicing at all, he's probably going to have to take a few breaks, come out. If he feels any funny, or like, tightness or anything like that, he'll probably come out right away. But I have to agree with him in the point where he says he knows he's the best receiver. He knows for a fact that he's the best receiver in the NFL. And, he's got to prove his doubters wrong, including apparently the Bengals front office. But he said, he knows his value. The Bengals front office should know his value, so it shouldn't really be that difficult, because if you're the best player at your position, you expect to be paid the best at your position. So if his former teammate Justin Jefferson, plays wide receiver as well, if he got paid whatever it is, $34 million, then if Jamar Chase thinks he's better than Justin, he wants to get paid significantly more. And like he said, it's not these rumors going around talking about he wants to get a penny more than Justin Jefferson. That doesn't make any sense. That's the kind of logic that basically people without any money would use. Is if you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not going to sit there and argue over, well, I want 1 penny more than this guy. Like, only the most petty type of person would have that kind of argument. Like Jamar Chase said, it's not about beating Justin Jefferson or getting 1 penny more than him or outdoing him. It's about getting paid his value. And regardless of what CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk or Justin Jefferson or any of these other guys are getting paid, Jamar Chase thinks, and I agree with him, that he's better than all these other guys and he deserves to get paid more than all these other guys. So the Bengals need to make it happen. And I hope that the Bengals agree and that they are able to find a way to make this deal happen one way or the other. The thing that I don't want to see, the thing that makes me nervous is just a couple years ago, they had arguably the best free safety in the NFL in Jesse Bates. And at the time, I don't think they asked Jesse if he thought he was the best safety. Maybe they did, but they asked Jesse if he wanted to be the highest paid safety in the NFL. And he didn't really comment on that. But it's kind of a similar situation is if the Bengals thought Jesse Bates was the best safety, you would think that they would want to pay him like that. But obviously either they didn't think Jesse Bates was the best safety, or they did think he was the best safety, but they didn't want to pay him the best. So I hope that the Bengals don't come to a similar conclusion with Jamar Chase and say, well, even though he is the best, we don't want to pay him like that and just let him walk out the door. They won't let him walk because they can franchise tag him after he gets through his first 5 seasons on his rookie deal. Bengals can add a 6th season on top of that. So there's ways where the Bengals can basically keep Jamar Chase on the roster, not let him go anywhere else, but keep his salary as low as possible and not have to pay him a big contract. I hope that that doesn't play out that way, because that's just going to lead to Jamar Chase being more frustrated and feels like he's getting screwed. And he doesn't have any negativity or animosity to the coaching staff. Coaching staff has nothing to do with it. And I'm sure all the coaches, if you ask them, hey, should we sign Jamar Chase to a contract extension? Yes, because the coaches like having good players on the team because that makes them more likely to win football games and keep their jobs. So they want to have good players on the team, but it's not up to them. It's up to the owners. The owners are the ones cutting the checks, and it's not necessarily the owners' motivation or their objective to make the best football team. They have to spend a certain amount of money. They want to make a competitive football team, a team that fans will be interested in, but they don't necessarily have to make the best possible team every year. The Bengals are very conservative about not overspending in any one particular season so that it doesn't completely throw off their plans down the road. And I understand that. You don't want to mortgage the farm for 1 year thinking, oh, this could be our only chance to win the Super Bowl, so we're just going to, push everything all in. You got to have a little bit of powder left, or, some ammo left over. But at the same time, you don't want to see Jamar Chase not get what he deserved. We'll have to see, like Jamar said, we'll have to see if he plays, How much does he play? All that's going to obviously play a big factor in whether or not the Bengals win or lose this game. Now, the Bengals are favored heavily against the Patriots. The Patriots are in their first year under brand new head coach Gerard Mayo for the last 25 seasons or whatever it was. The Patriots had Bill Belichick as their head coach, and they're also their basically de facto general manager. He was the one picking all the players who they wanted to draft, running the whole show. Now it's a new coach, new system. He's inexperienced as a head coach, so it will be interesting. Zach Taylor, he's been to the playoffs, been to the Super Bowl. This isn't his first rodeo, so Zach Taylor should have the experience advantage in terms of just in-game decision-making, when to call timeout, when to challenge, just little small things like that. I'm sure Gerard Mayo, he's been around in the NFL. He was an assistant coach for a number of years, so it's not like he's a complete newbie at this. But still, whenever it's your first time in any situation, you don't have that experience to fall back on. So that will be interesting to see in terms of how the head coaching battle plays out. Beyond the coaching, let's talk about some of the injuries in this game. Injuries are going to be a big story, even bigger than what I initially thought it was going to be going just a couple days ago, because T. Higgins is the Bengals' top wide receiver if Jamar Chase does not play. T. Higgins was in the same draft class as Joe Burrow, hasn't gotten to a Pro Bowl, but Bengals did franchise tag him, meaning he's going to make $21.8 million this year. Jamar Chase, by the way, is making $4.8 million, so considerably less than T. Higgins. But T was practicing and looking good in all the preseason games, all that kind of stuff. Then all of a sudden, on Thursday, Bengals listed T. Higgins on the injury report as limited with a hamstring issue, which was a little bit concerning, but then the reporters were interviewing T. Higgins in the locker room after practice, and they asked him a bunch of questions about a lot of different things, including Jamar Chase. But one of the questions was, how do you feel physically? And he looked at them and had this big smile, and he said, I feel amazing. It's going to be so great to get out there and, feel ready to have an amazing season. So maybe that was just kind of gamesmanship. Like, he doesn't want to say, oh, actually, my hamstring is pulled AF and I cannot run at all. I'm probably not going to play on Sunday, if I got to be honest with you guys. He can't say that because the Bengals, they want to keep everything close to the vest. Don't give any information away about whether or not their star players are going to play in the game or not. So the Patriots, they want to keep them guessing and have to prepare for a lot of different scenarios. If Jamar Chase, I'm sure they're going to prepare as if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins will play, just in case. You don't want to just assume that all the best players on the other team aren't going to be there. So the Patriots are going to be prepared, but T. Higgins then Friday did not practice at all. He was listed as doubtful on the final injury report for the game for the Bengals. So he went from being completely healthy to limited to doubtful. So we'll have to check on Sunday whether or not T. Higgins plays. But when you're listed as doubtful, it's most likely that you won't play. That will make it even more significant whether or not Jamar Chase does play in the game, because if T. Higgins isn't able to go, then if they're down T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, then who are they going to be putting out there at wide receiver? It's going to be guys who have never really played a lot of snaps in the NFL. We're talking about Trenton Irwin, Andre Yosivas, Jermaine Burton, Charlie Jones, and they only have 6 on the active roster, so they'd probably have to call up another wide receiver from their practice squad to get to at least 5 wide receivers. But yeah, a lot of guys with not a lot of experience in the NFL. And I know we have high hopes for all those guys. We have big expectations for Andre Yosivas and Jermaine Burton and all those guys. But without T. Higgins, without Jamar Chase, Bengals' chances of winning, you have to say, are not as good, just because Jamar Chase is one of the best players in the NFL. If you don't have Jamar Chase, you don't have T. Higgins, one of the, let's say, top 30 wide receivers in the NFL at least, your chances of winning are going to be drastically reduced. On top of that, Amarius Mims, Bengals' first-round draft pick at right tackle, he is out. This is not that much of a surprise because they said he was going to be out several weeks with that pectoral injury. Trent Brown has already been taking the first-string snaps. So Trent Brown is going to start at right tackle. Amarius Mims won't be there to back him up, unfortunately. And without, Deontay Smith is on injured reserve. They got rid of Jackson Carman. So Jackson Kirkland and maybe Cody Ford would be their backup tackles going into this game. But, without Trent Brown, if they had Amarius Mims as their backup tackle, you'd feel better than Jackson Kirkland or Cody Ford for sure. So hopefully Trent Brown is able to stay healthy all the way through this first game. But, Trent Brown has a history of injuries in his long career. So knock on wood, hopefully he can stay healthy. On the defensive side, Chris Jenkins, their second-round draft pick in this last year's draft, he had been limited in practice with what was listed as a thumb. So you're like, okay, thumb, probably not that big of a deal. He'll probably be okay. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, actually, Chris Jenkins needs surgery on his thumb, and he's going to be out for this game also. We already know third-round pick McKinley Jackson is on injured reserve. So out of the Bengals' top 4 draft picks in the most recent draft, 3 of them are not going to be able to play in the first game due to injury. The third-round pick, Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, he's not injured, but, we talked about last time how Al Michaels was making a comment that he was sleeping in meetings, and just a lot of rumors and speculation about Jermaine Burton inside the Bengals locker room about maybe some maturity issues, which was why he was drafted in the third round instead of the first round. This was the wrap on Jermaine Burton coming out of college. So it's not totally unexpected, but it is a little bit disappointing because he's obviously shown that he can make big plays. He's a big-time athlete. Just got to figure out what to do in terms of running the right routes, making the right checks, making the right reads when he's on the field, because the coaches can't put him out there if they can't trust him with the game plan, if they can't trust what he's going to do. And if the quarterback can't trust what he's going to do, they're not going to be able to throw him the ball. But outside of Jermaine Burton, in terms of playmakers on offense, I'm going to have an eye on Andre Yosivage, wide receiver from Princeton, because of course I would. But he's been getting a lot of hype in training camp from all the reporters about how big and fast he's looking. And hopefully that all plays out. We haven't seen Andre go over the middle. He's going to be playing that Tyler Boyd slot receiver role. That's where you got to go over the middle and get hit by a lot of linebackers. So I don't know if they hit as hard in the Ivy League as they do in the NFL. We'll have to see if Andre can take a hit and pop back up. One of the other things I'm interested to see in this game is how does the Bengals offense look with new offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher. He's coming in to replace Brian Callahan up in the booth. And Dan Pitcher normally was on the sideline, so the fact that he's going to be up in the press box during games is going to be a little bit of a change. But Zach Taylor said that was critical for him because he felt like having the coach up in the press box with a different perspective on the game, that elevated view, can give him some kind of advantage in terms of calling the plays and figuring out what to do on offense. We're going to have to see how they decide who to play on game day, because if they're going to be thin at wide receiver, they've only got 2 running backs on the active roster in Zach Moss and Chase Brown, and they've got 5 tight ends on the active roster. So they may call up Travion Williams from the practice squad to be an additional 3rd running back. Like I said, they may have to call up a wide receiver from the practice squad if T. Higgins and or Jamar Chase don't play. They got all these tight ends. They might as well use them like Eric All and Tanner McLaughlin. They're 2 rookie tight ends. They may get some action in this game. But I'm curious to see whether there is any drastic difference between last year's offense and this year's offense with the new offensive coordinator, or is it just going to be more of the same? Hopefully there's a few new wrinkles, spice it up a little bit, because they didn't necessarily have the best offense last year. And I know all the excuses are going to be, well, Joe Burrow got hurt. Oh, Joe Burrow was injured, and then he got hurt, and so that's why the offense wasn't good. Yeah, maybe, but even when they had Jake Browning, there was no running game. Like, they had Joe Mixon. They couldn't really get anything going. So we'll have to see if the offensive line is improved in their blocking in the running game, and whether the running backs in Zach Moss and Chase Brown are able to break some tackles, make some moves to get free in the open field and get some longer explosive runs that were really missing from last year's offense. On the opposite side of the ball, can the Bengals stop the run from the Patriots? That was the Bengals' defense biggest, or one of the biggest weaknesses for the defense, was stopping the run last year. And everybody knows that. The Patriots know that. That's what they're going to try to do in this game with Ramondre Stevenson. And the quarterback that the Patriots are playing with, Jacoby Brissett, he's a veteran, journeyman, backup, career backup quarterback. He's played with a bunch of different teams, including the Browns, where I think he got a win against the Bengals. He's done pretty well against the Bengals. But Jacoby Brissett, he's the safer option instead of their first-round draft pick in Drake May in New England. He's got more upside potential, but he's a young rookie, not a lot of experience. So I think in game one, going up against Lou Anarumo, who can have a lot of complicated defensive schemes, Patriots might not want to start the rookie, which makes sense. But can the Bengals stop the run? And if the Patriots do decide to pass, I'm going to be interested to see if they try to pick on Dax Hill at cornerback. Dax Hill last year was playing safety. Now he's switched positions, playing outside coverage cornerback opposite Cam Taylor-Britt. And that's not a position that he's played at all in the NFL. Maybe, a few snaps as a rookie, but even in college, he was more of an inside-the-box slot nickel cornerback, more of the Mike Hilton role than outside cornerback. So it's going to be interesting. How does he play in his first game? Do they try to take advantage of some of his inexperience out there, or does he live up to his first-round athleticism, show the reason why they drafted him so highly? Speaking of the defensive backfield, though, the thing that we have heard over and over and over, if you've listened to any Bengals news or podcasts or anything, they've talked about communication in the defense. Logan Wilson gave an interview with one of the reporters where he basically sold out the safeties, Nick Scott and Dax Hill last year. He was like, last year there was no communication. Like, those guys back there weren't saying anything. So this year is way better. We're communicating. And so they're trying to say that Von Bell and Geno Stone are going to make all the difference in the defense. And somehow the safeties communicating are going to help the linebackers. They're going to help the defensive linemen. Apparently everybody on the defense is going to be assisted by the fact that they're going to swap out the safeties. Hopefully that's true. But like I said, some things don't really need communication. Like the defensive nose tackle up front, the safety doesn't need to communicate to him like, hey, don't get pancakes, don't get blown all the way into the backfield. Like, some things are understood. So we'll have to see whether that makes a big difference in the Bengals defense this year. Also on the defensive side, the question is going to be, can they get any pressure on the quarterback and get some sacks? That was one of the things. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, Bengals really could not muster any pass rush at all. It was Trey Hendrickson or nothing. Sam Hubbard, he was injured last year, but he didn't really get too many sacks. DJ Reader, that wasn't really his specialty. So the Bengals swapped out DJ Reader for Sheldon Rankins. Can Sheldon Rankins be disruptive in the middle and get some sacks? We're not going to see Chris Jenkins, but we are going to see BJ Hill. So same thing for him. And we know that Trey Hendrickson is probably going to come around the edge, do some swim moves or dip and rips, get maybe a sack or two. Hopefully he can strip the ball out, cause a fumble. Bengals, if they can get a turnover, that would go a long way to helping this offense in their first game. Like I mentioned, Gerard Mayo, first-time head coach. We'll have to see how that plays out. And also, Ryan Rico, Bengals punter, he's a rookie. This is going to be his first game, not only punting, but holding for field goals. That's a big part of the punting job, is being the holder on those. And hopefully he has had enough practice with Evan McPherson, so if they need to attempt any long field goals, he'll be 100% accurate in terms of placing the ball. There was a missed field goal in the Bengals preseason, although it was from 58 yards out, but it was a little bit wide right, so maybe it was just a little bit of not being familiar with the holder. They've got that all figured out for sure, but I want to see Ryan Rico maybe pin the Patriots deep in their own territory. Don't get any touchbacks, no shank punts. I think if he can have a good, solid, consistent performance, he's got a chance to replace Brad Robbins as their full-time punter. But this is kind of Ryan Rico, this is kind of his 4-game audition to be the full-time punter while Brad Robbins is injured with that hip injury. Now, for one interesting stat for this, since 2020, the Bengals are 1-7 in the first 2 weeks of the season, which is tied with the Minnesota Vikings for the worst record in the NFL in that same time period. And similarly, the New England Patriots have not won a game or a week 1 opener since 2020 either. So Bengals are 1-7 in the first two weeks. Patriots haven't won any games in their first game of the season since 2020. So one of these teams has to win one of these games. It's somebody they could tie. I think didn't the Bengals they've gone to overtime a few times. They've had a few ties in the Zach Taylor era, but we would assume somebody's got to win. And like I mentioned, Bengals are heavily favored in this game. They started off as like 9.5 or 10-point favorites to start off the week. But as the week has gone on, Jamar Chase has kind of had this ongoing saga. Will he play? Will he won't play? And then we saw Chris Jenkins, Amarius Mims, and T. Higgins are both going to be out of the game. Now the Bengals are only favored by 7.5 points. So it's come down a little bit closer. Still more than a touchdown, which is for a week 1 game in the NFL where nobody is supposed to know who's good and who's bad yet. The fact that the Bengals are favored by more than a touchdown, which is the biggest difference, biggest point spread in the league for any game. So Bengals are heavily favored. It's going to be obviously a disappointment if they're not able to get the win. It's going to be partly due to if Jamar Chase is able to play, how well is he able to play. If he does play, I'm going to be interested to see how Jamar Chase makes that decision when it comes to game day. If T. Higgins doesn't play, obviously he doesn't want to sabotage the team and make them worse by him not playing. But at the same time, he's got to think about his longevity, as it were. Think about that long-term contract. And if his body isn't physically ready to go, if he's mentally not ready to go, whatever it is, he may not play. I hope he does, like I said, because he's my favorite player on the team. I want to see him play because I think he's an amazing athlete. But if he doesn't have that contract, I understand where he's coming from. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you could make the argument about why the Bengals wouldn't want to pay Jamar Chase, because New England Patriots in this offseason, they signed their defensive tackle Christian Barmore to a 4-year, $92 million extension. Biggest contract New England had ever given to somebody not named Tom Brady. And he was drafted in the second round of the same draft class as Jamar Chase. So he's got this huge payday in the offseason. But a month before the season starts, he's got blood clots, and he's potentially not even going to play for the entire season. It's still up in the air whether or not he's going to be able to play with these blood clots. But like I said, he just signed this massive contract extension, and then just a few months later, he's not even sure if he's going to ever be able to play in the NFL again because he's got blood clots. So that's the type of thing that could possibly happen to Jamar Chase or any player at any time. If you're the owner of a franchise, you don't know when disaster could strike, and the player that you just paid almost $100 million to all of a sudden can't even play at all. It can't even give you any return on your investment. So I understand why the Bengals want to protect themselves from situations like that. But I think they just got to, if they are serious about having a competitive football team and going to the playoffs, going to the Super Bowl consistently, they got to sign Jamar Chase. You can't just let one of the best players in the NFL walk out the door. And you don't want him to be totally disgruntled, wanting to hold out, not wanting to be his best. Because like he said, he put in all the work in the offseason. And the reason they work and put in the work, I know fans like to think that they do it all to win the Super Bowl. I got bad news for you fans. It's to get paid. They want to get paid just like everybody else. So they're thinking about this like a job, like they're trying to get a paycheck, working their butt off to get the paycheck. And when it's time to get paid, when it's time to get the raise that they deserve, they want to get paid. Otherwise, their motivation, their enthusiasm, their excitement is going to be diminished, which I don't want to see. I don't want to see Jamar Chase out there making business decisions about, my hamstring's feeling a little tight too, coach. I don't think I can go today. I don't want that to be the scenario that lingers over this team throughout the season. Because honestly, this whole story has kind of dampened my excitement and enthusiasm. I want to be super pumped and excited for this game, but it's like, but my favorite player, the best player on the team, is really unhappy because the team hasn't signed him to a contract extension and other players are getting injured. So, we just got to focus on the positives here. Focus on the positives. I'm sure it's going to be a great game. Joe Burrow is going to go out there and look exactly like he did before he got a screw put inside of his throwing wrist. Let's just not even think about that. He's going to be 100% the whole rest of the season. Jamar Chase is going to be 100% when he gets out there. All these guys, it's going to be great. So we have that to look forward to. And after the game, we'll come back and break everything down as we always do. Before I go, don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, do all this stuff. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, whatever, tell me how wrong I am, send me an email at bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com. If it's a good email, I'll read it on the show. I'm pumped, excited for this game. Hopefully you are too. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.